Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom. We'll take a look at what caused purple martins to disappear from the UP landscape and the successful efforts to bring them back.
And we actually got down to one pair in 2015 before we changed out all the housing here.
9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. "906 Outdoors" is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours. While the global population is stable, Michigan purple martins have experienced a steep population decline since the mid-60s. I visited Ludington Park in Escanaba and talked with Joe Kaplan, a biologist with Common Coast Research and Conservation, for a first-hand look at the successful efforts to bring them back.
So when you think about purple martins, last fall my wife and I, we drove from Escanaba down to Menominee, and I think we counted like 23 old purple martin boxes, all in various states of dilapidation. And the reason that those boxes don't have martins in them anymore is because beginning in about the mid-90s, there was a real serious decline in the population. And beginning about 94, they started disappearing. Colonies that people had been maintaining for 20, 25 years all of a sudden just disappeared. And over about a 3-year period, almost all the martins I knew about in the UP were gone. And this observation was sort of borne out during the first Michigan Breeding Bird Atlas in the late 80s and early 90s. And the second Breeding Bird Atlas that was done in the early 2000s indicated a 95% range retraction of purple martin in the UP. All purple martins nest in boxes that are put out by people. So their habitat, their nesting habitat, is a bird box. And we started seeing a decline here and looked into reasons why the species was declining and then worked hard to try to reverse it. And we actually got down to one pair in 2015 before we changed out all the housing here. And since then, we've gone from one pair up to 8 pairs last year in 2019, and then this year things kind of broke loose and we're up to 20 pairs and we're going to fledge 60 chicks here. We have the potential to start restoring purple martins in the Upper Peninsula, and it's been a great success in Escanaba, and we hope to continue the upward trend.
"906 Outdoors" is brought to you in part by Christ, your Northwoods neighborhood store.
The natural history of purple martins, birds winter because they're 100% insect eaters. They migrate down to the Amazon basin where most of them spend the winter in the Amazon. And then beginning in probably late winter, they start to make their way back to North America. The eastern population, which includes everything east of the Mississippi, birds arrive to Florida, Texas, probably February, March, and then arrival up here sort of at the north end of the range. Typically we'll start seeing the first martins late April, early May, and those first birds inspect their housing, and then they just wait for the rest of the colony to arrive. And then typically what happens is birds will pair up again. The males and females are really easy to tell apart as adults. The males are totally purple and blue, and it takes them 2 years to get that plumage. Otherwise, they look a lot like the females, and the females are sort of bluish or dark above and light below. And as they start to set up for the season, they'll take over the nest boxes, they're colonial nesters. So in the model that we use here, it's called a T14. There's 14 different compartments on 4 houses all put together. And they're large, roomy compartments that the martins can go in, lay eggs. They typically have brood sizes between 4 and 6. And they raise those chicks on a diet of insects They eat a lot of dragonflies, fish flies, moss, any kind of flying insect. As they establish the colonies, the older birds in the colony that have had previous experience, what they do is they try to recruit new birds into the colony, and the way that is done to continue the population is the males will do a dawn song. Well, they'll go up pre-dawn and right at dawn and do a high sort of over the colony, and they'll do a dawn song in the hopes of attracting new birds that were hatched the previous years from other places to recruit back into the population. It's very hard to establish a new colony without already having martins in a colony. And one way that you can establish a new colony is playing a call at dawn of a male martin, and that will alert birds that are looking for a new colony or suitable housing, come and inspect your area, and that's how new populations get established. So with any luck, because this is the last population and it's up and running, producing lots of chicks, we're hoping to build a network of people in the UP who want to bring back the martins so that we can establish new populations and hopefully fill out that range retraction that has been in decline for so long. There's no reason that in 10 or 15 years we shouldn't have them back nesting in Lake Superior, up at the Upper Peninsula, over in the eastern UP. It's all we need to provide for them. One of the biggest declines thought to be driving the population decline is competition with European starlings. Traditionally, we didn't have starlings here because we had long winters, and it just wasn't very good environment for starlings. But with less snow and more degree days, we see a lot of starlings. And starlings love these cavities, and traditionally people would put in those 2-inch holes for purple martins. And if you put a 2-inch hole on a box like this, you're guaranteed to get starlings. And unfortunately, starlings will start to nest earlier than martins. And what we observed here is the starlings would take over the boxes and exclude the martins when they were arriving, and it just drove the decline. So the way we did a workaround on that is starlings have a big keel and martins are kind of flattened. So you'll notice on all these boxes that they're laterally compressed holes. So the martins can slip right in, but they're too flat for the starlings. So that got rid of our starling issue. And unfortunately, we don't have big house sparrow populations. That's another nest competitor, another introduced species that's wreaked havoc on native birds. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of house sparrows in town. The UP is still inhospitable long winters for them.
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Blades Bait and Tackle, your year-round connection to fishing bait Enoch.
One of the challenges of maintaining martin boxes is that they're colonial nesters. They need a big 6x6 cavity. It's important to have a way to raise and lower the boxes here. So all these boxes are handmade wood boxes, which I think have some great advantages over the commercial plastic and aluminum boxes. One is, we don't have problems in the north with overheating in the summer, but they do down south where the martins are a lot more common. So a lot of the commercial boxes have a lot of ventilation, but that doesn't work up here. If you get a martin coming in on April 28th, we can get some pretty wicked weather in May. So, imagine trying to survive after you've just gotten back from the Amazon basins by spending 4 or 5 days in an aluminum box when there's 6 inches of snow on the ground. So I think these have a much better advantage. But as a result, since they're all wood boxes, you got to have a safe way to raise and lower them, to maintain them and check them. We worked with the local manufacturer, Northern Machine, to make a pulley system, and then we had all our boxes donated by a local conservation group, Wildlife Unlimited of Delta County, which has done tremendous work over the last 30 years, all in Delta County. We have these entrance holes that are modified to exclude starlings. And actually, this is the first year that the martins in Ludington Park have expanded. We're checking this for the first time. It looks like there's a couple pairs that have split off from the main colony and starting a new little sub-colony here. First thing I can show you is this is a house sparrow nest. So this one was used earlier in the season. I was a bad landlord for not keeping these things out, but geez, it appears that the young died right in the nest. House sparrows like to fill up these boxes with a lot of debris. So this is a species that ideally you would exclude from using your martin boxes or any nest boxes for that matter. Nobody in there. This looks like an old tree swallow nest. Tree swallows like to add a lot of feathers to their nests. Martins are quite different. They'll usually just put in a few sticks, and then they like to line the nest with fresh green leaves. Oh, bingo. There we go. We got babies right there. The purple martin bird. So these birds, when they leave here, they'll be with the parents for a while, and then they'll migrate, and they will spend the winter down in the Amazon basin before returning back to the UP to seek out new territory. Now, some of them might come back into these colonies, or some might disperse further looking for available houses. Oh yeah, look at this little guy. So that's the best insect eater that money can't buy. And because of the association between humans and purple martins, I mean, these are confiding birds. They're really used to human beings, and like I said, back in the 50s and 60s, you hear stories of people would go up to the lake house or the cottage or the camp and put out the dock, put up the purple martin box, and then crack a beer. So we want to bring that triathlon back because we still have the docks and beer, but we don't have enough martins. I would say this bird's probably 10 to 14 days old. Yeah, and that's something that this bird, if it survives, is going to end up in the Amazon basin. Yeah, they're just sweet little birds. And then what we do after they're gone is we'll clean out these nest boxes to get rid of the parasites. If you leave the nesting material in over winter, when you come back in the spring, the thing will be filled with fleas. Adult fleas will overwinter in these boxes in that nesting material. It could be 30 below and those fleas don't care. So we'll clean them all out, and then we'll put in a layer of pine needles, and that's all they need to do to get started. This is not a very elaborate nest. A lot of them, they'll build it up a little bit and then add like the layer of green leaves. But these birds have been in there long enough that all those leaves have probably been taken out. So these chicks probably have another, week to 10 days before they fledge. Looks like their pin feathers are starting to come in. So as their feathers grow, feathers are attached to a blood supply, and then they grow out from the base. And then eventually, when they're fully grown, the base of that quill will get cut off from the blood supply, and then that feather is just dried keratin. As these chicks get bigger, it appears that, like the adults will use empty cavities, so you can't have the whole family packed in there at once. But I mean, these birds, they have very short legs. They spend almost 100% of their time on the wing or perching out in a conspicuous area on top of the house. This is not a bird that you would find on the ground. 5, that's a nice brood. The most I've seen is 6, but 5 is pretty typical. And this bad landlording here, I'm not going to reach into this one. So this is what happens when you don't maintain your martin boxes. You had a house sparrow move in, and now you got a paper wasp. This is why you can't just put up a box and walk away. You got to maintain these things. You got to clean out the boxes, otherwise, they're just going to be taken over by things, and this will never be used for purple martins. Oh, and this is a good example here of the cavity. So when we originally did it, we had the 2-inch holes, and we just filled up with starlings. We had to modify all these to add this starling resistant entry hole. But they don't spend a lot of time nest building, because this is the nest right here. Cool.
I stopped in at Race Driven in Escanaba for a look at the latest in off-road bikes.
I'm Dwight, I'm from Race Driven, and here I got the Gas 2023 Factory Edition 450, and I got the 2023 KTM Factory Edition. These bikes over our other bikes are our newer bikes that we have in stock. These are the new years for 2023 and 2024. The factory bikes, they come with a lot of extra parts that you don't find on a lot of the regular bikes like the MCs and the XCs. These come with a full Archipovic exhaust on them. They come with the Hinson billet clutch cover. These are all factory OEM race bikes. They come with the anodized orange triple trees up top. They got aftermarket hubs, hub guards. They run our exact WP forks, also WP rear shock. These bikes also feature the factory edition graphics, which is new for this year, the Red Bull KTM, and then also on the gas, we have the Troy Lee design gas Red Bull. These both come with the gripper style seats on them. These also feature the new chassis for 2023, new aluminum subframe, the newer 450 motor. We also have the same chassis that have the 250 motor inside of them. They come with skid plate, full graphics, rear hub, aftermarket KTM, anodized orange, and then also on the gas we have the anodized blue hubs on those as well. These bikes also come with the Dirt Star wheels instead of the factory OEM wheels, so there's just a lot of upgrades in general that you can get for these. They also feature a new mapping, new suspension setup settings. You get your bang for your buck out of these ones. The 450 in these years, they do feature the new shorter stroke 450 instead of like the last year, so they do wind up a little faster. They also have, like I said, have the new mapping to them. So you can also choose a more subtle, riding style, or if you're out on the track and you want to get into it a little bit more, you can actually go to the more aggressive style tune in the mapping. These also offer our new traction control setup, which is good for launch control, and they also feature a better quick shift setting now. So you get the quick shift for motocross tracks. These come with a whole shot device right from the factory. So these are ready right out of the box. You can get it right down to the racetrack and you're ready to race.
I can almost promise by this time next year, there'll probably be 4 or 5 pairs. Well, that's cool. So that's an after second year male, and yeah, see, he's got some flotchy, that's probably a young male, and then that's an older male down below. So it takes 2 years to get that adult plumage, that purple plumage. So this bird would have been, is at least in its second year. It takes 2 years. So this year's chick, if it's a male, if it recruits back into a population, will look like a female next year. And then the year after that, when it returns in the spring, it'll be all purple. So this is a young bird that's not nesting, but he's now recruited back into this colony. So there's 14 places for nesting in this box. There's 2 boxes with 4 holes and then 2 with 3 holes. So he'll return next year. If he returns, he'll be all purple too, and then he'll attract a mate, and then they'll start filling out this colony.
Purple martin houses are more like bird apartments, and hopefully we begin to see more and more of them across the UP. If you're interested in the more typical style one-room accommodations, here's some ideas from Joe for something you can easily build yourself.
Yeah, so this is a design that was developed by a guy named Steve Gilbertson in Minnesota, and he was just he set out to build a better birdhouse, and he came up with a really simple PVC design. So this is a PVC tube that's just cut to length, drilled an entrance hole into it, put a couple vent holes, and then painted it like a white birch, and then it has a plug in the bottom. And the second piece is just a piece of cedar with a piece of 2x2, and then 2 set screws. So this will attract tree swallows, bluebirds, and chickadees. And the key for bluebirds and tree swallows, especially if you live near water, tree swallows are some of the earliest cavity nesters that return. So if you get a tree swallow, even at the farm, if you put another box within 15 feet of that tree swallow, they're very territorial against each other, but they could care less about a bluebird. And then the other great feature of this is you have a piece of rebar and then an electrical conduit that you can then tap into the ground. And the great thing about this is that you can be out in the open, and it don't have trouble with predators on this, because raccoons can't get up it, Snakes don't seem to be attracted to it. You can bring it down, inspect it, or clean it out. It's very important to clean out the nests after the young leave. It helps reduce parasites. And it's great if you have little kids you want to show baby birds to, you can take this right off. With tree swallows and bluebirds, I've gone and done nest checks where the female just stays right on the eggs. That's not the case with black-capped chickadee. Chickadees are very trusting, and but when they're nesting, they're really secretive, and you can cause nest abandonment. So if you have chickadees that are looking to nest in one of your nest boxes, best thing to do is just pretend they're not there and watch from a distance. Here's a more traditional nest box. This is designed by a friend of mine, Tom Comfort, down in Bel Air, Michigan. And boy, this is like a high-tech bird box. So the features of this is made with LP Smart Side, so it's a lot lighter. And the great thing about this is it has a flexible hinge on the bottom so that it's really easy to check and maintain and clean out. And then there's just a little nail that goes in the side. Now, bluebirds tend to like a really open hole. So they like the open hole, but it's important to put this little bar across so that starlings don't take it over. When you're trying to get native birds nesting, you got to be real mindful of excluding house sparrows and European starlings, because if you produce those, they'll outcompete all the native birds for these nest boxes. And we're lucky in the UP, we have very low population levels of house sparrows. So I have these in town in Escanaba, and I've had bluebirds, chickadees, tree swallows all in my yard on an annual basis. I don't have any issues with house sparrows.
Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up to get on the 906 Outdoors email list. We'll send you an occasional email with tips, recipes, and more. You'll also be eligible for giveaways just for being on the list. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.